Hi, you're watching Stories in Standard Def, and I'm Lisa G. Vancouverites are famous for their sporty lifestyle, and we often get mocked for our casual and practical outfits, our anoraks, our yoga pants, and our fleece. And we love our bicycles. If I had to be a Spice Girl, I definitely want to be Sporty Spice. Today, I'm going to show you stories from your own neighborhood. Folks that have taken their sporty lifestyle to a whole nother level.
My name is Helen Stewart Hunt, and I lived at 30th Avenue and McDonald Street from the age of 9, and I was very competitive as a kid. I used to play a lot with the boys in the neighborhood, so I figure it was actually the racing I liked more than the swimming. I had a lot of BC and Canadian age group records, and at the age of 14, I began winning open events. The assistant coach under Percy Norman was Howard Furby, and he became my coach after I won a silver medal in the 4x110 freestyle relay at the 1954 British Empire Games in Vancouver. Howard taught me technique and strategy, which paid off in a gold medal in the 100-meter freestyle at the 1955 Pan American Games in Mexico City. It was impressive for a Canadian to win, because the Americans had so many world-class swimmers. I received quite a bit of attention from the press after this win, and later in 1955 I placed second in the U.S. Outdoor Nationals in Philadelphia, out of 96 competitors. In the spring of 1956, I again placed second in the U.S. Indoor Nationals in Florida. I was honored for my successes in 1955 to be chosen BC Athlete of the Year by the sports writers at the Vancouver Sun and Province newspapers. So it was another honor for me to be invited to open the new Kerrisdale Pool in June of 1956. I cut the ribbon and I was the first to swim in the pool. First to enter the pool after Miss Stewart were Ryerson Church Boy Scouts, who had earned the honor by clearing away the 100-odd chairs after the ceremony. This was written in the Kerrisdale Courier. In November of 1956, I broke the world record in the 100-yard freestyle. I then competed at the 1956 Olympic Games in Melbourne as one of only 6 Canadian girls who had achieved the qualifying standard. In the late 1960s and early 70s, I swapped swimming for volleyball and competed again internationally. But that is another story.
This little inlet here, I've paddled it for over 60 years. Of course, the name of our First Nation is Tsleil-Waututh. Tsleil-Waututh means the people of the inlet. The first time I was ever in a 11 paddle canoe I was about 7. My grandmother was building a shingle mill down in front of the church on our little reserve. And my uncle's 2 canoes were laying in the field there, the checkerboard and the junior. And they chopped up the junior already, and my dad told him, don't bother chopping up the 11 paddle, the checkerboard. So he went to talk to his brother, older brother Henry was the one that built the canoe. And he asked his brother, he said, can I fix up your canoe for you? And his brother Henry said, if you can fix it up, you can keep it. So my dad fixed it up, and they won the championship in 1949, 1950, and 51. And then unfortunately, my uncle took his boat back. But my dad built a single especially for my older brother Dale, and he became the single paddle champ. My dad was a single paddle champ from 36 to probably 56. And then my brother took over. And he was a champ until 61, and my brother was smaller than me. And I thought, I can't let this little squirt beat me all the time. So unfortunately our dad passed away that year, and my brother and I decided, well, we're just going to have to go back to what our dad taught us, how to paddle and how to train. So when we started doing that, I started beating Dale. So I became single paddle champ. But my brother and I were double paddle champs the same years from 1961 to 72. Even when we weren't training or paddling, I used to paddle from our house where we were. I used to paddle across to Ironworkers, paddle all the way down the far side into Port Moody, back across to Deep Cove, and then I'd paddle back here. Sometimes I'd be gone for 6 hours, just paddling around. And while I was paddling, I could feel our ancestors, because that's where they used to paddle. So, paddling's been our way of life, and the water means a lot to us.
The greatest thing about the neighborhood I grew up in was the smooth stretch of road on West 52nd Avenue between Cypress and Angus. It was a place my friends and I called the Daily. And from the age of 12 or 13 until I finished high school, I skateboarded there almost every day. It was a place of fun and freedom, and a place to try new tricks and to learn how to skateboard. In the beginning, we loved the Daily just because it was a flat space and it had a curb we could slide on. But as we got older and more organized, we started building boxes and rails and ramps. And basically, we built ourselves our own little skate park. When building all these ramps, we took advantage of the construction that was happening in Kerrisdale in the 90s. And magically overnight, a sheet or two of plywood from here or there would find its way to the Daily, where it was transformed into an object of fun. The man who lived on the corner was a retired physician, and he was very generous to us. He let us keep all of our ramps and boxes on a corner of his property. We gave him the nickname of Old Man Daily, and this was a fond nickname. It was one given with love. And when I look back at it now, I'm really amazed with how generous he was, because we did stockpile quite a bit of stuff there, and it probably looked like a bit of an eyesore. As we got a little bit older, we started to get more adventurous, and we really branched out from the Daily. We would go downtown, we would go to UBC, to Oak Ridge, to Salem Bowl, to Granville Island, to Ladner Skate Park, to Yaletown. We really traveled a lot, and this was great for us because it was a way to sort of see the city and interpret it through our own eyes, and also good for us to get out of Kerrisdale because we were a bit isolated there. If you don't have a good reason to leave it when you're a kid, you don't so much. If you go to the Daily today, the ramps are gone. Old Man Daly's house has been torn down and a new one has been built. Most of the friends have all moved out of the neighborhood, and the original wax is no longer on the curb. But the sweet evening air still remains. The memories that come from all the good times on four wheels remain. And the smooth stretch of road is still as fast and as fun as ever.
Growing up in Scotland, everyone played soccer. That was just what you did. So when we moved to Vancouver, I wanted our son Craig to play the game as well. When he was about 6, I took him up to Maple Grove School to see if we could get him on that team because I'd heard it was a good one. When we got there, it turned out that they had enough players already, but the coach said we could play during the practice anyhow. Well, Craig had been coming to my team's practice for years already, so he was pretty good with the ball. After the practice, the coach came up to us and said, I think there's a spot after all. He was Scottish actually, like me. I started coaching the Kerrisdale Roadrunners, Craig's team, when he was about 10. We practiced at Elm Park at 41st and Larch every Tuesday and Thursday. They were a talented bunch of boys. They went to the Canadian Championships 3 times and won it twice. Once we even went to Toronto to play in the Mini World Cup and we won that too. I was playing soccer myself at the same time and coaching my younger son's team as well. So just about every night after work there was one practice or another. On days off we'd have everyone over for pizza parties. It was a great time. Between my team and my son's teams we had so many trophies they took up the whole living room. Finally my wife got sick of them, saying they were just dust magnets, and threw them all away. These days in Scotland it's not the same anymore. People have other things to do besides playing soccer. But here in Canada I'm still running around with my grandkids and watching them play soccer whenever I can.
I was born in Vancouver General Hospital in 1927 with what doctors at the time called a deformed foot. The Crippled Children's Hospital was opened in 1928. It was in a house on Hudson Street, and I was one of the first babies there. Over the years, I had around 7 operations. One day when I was about 13, I remember I was circled by 21 doctors. I counted them all. They were deciding what to do with my foot. The doctors thought that another operation to turn it would help. But my dad finally said, "This is enough. She can walk well enough now." Until grade 9, I had to wear a brace with a boot, and everybody looked at me. I hated school. I hated being looked at. I was always interested in sports, and so I wanted to do what the other kids did. But no one would pick me for their team. I tried playing field hockey, but my teacher said I would be better as a goalpost. I sat on the bench during basketball games and wondered how I would ever get better if I didn't get to play. I wanted to do something and found out that high jump could be that something for me. I taught myself after school, and I had to drag 2 poles and the bar out of the equipment room to practice each night. I even had to dig the dirt to make it soft to land in. In those days, we jumped into a dirt pit. A neighbor built me a high jump pit a couple of doors down in an empty lot, so I could just practice anytime. I had to alter the scissors jump, which was how they jumped during my era. So instead of alternating feet, I had to take off and land on the same foot. After I graduated from high school, the Hudson's Bay Girls Track Club invited my best friend Millie to join. And she said, "If Shirley can come along, I will join." So that's what happened. To get to practice from my house, I had a 2.5 block walk to Broadway and Oak, and then had to ride 3 different streetcars to the entrance to Stanley Park, and then walk 20 minutes to Brockton Oval, where we would practice for 2 hours. But those were marvelous times. There was great camaraderie with the 12 to 18 girls from different schools all around Vancouver. We were all interested in competing. A few of us got into the 1948 Olympic Games in London, England, and as well as the 1950 British Empire Games in Auckland, New Zealand. I had something in me. I don't know what it was, but I had something that said I could do it. All I had to do was keep working at it. I always felt like I didn't have a hope in hell of getting anywhere. But gee, I did it.
Soccer had always been my most favorite sport. In Korea, I started to play soccer when I was in grade 1. Even though there were no grass fields for me and my friends to play soccer, we still managed to play on the gravel fields that would leave us scars on our knees for a long time. In Korea, it is abnormal for girls to play soccer along with the boys. This stereotype did not hold me back. I still played soccer in boys' team, even though the coaches didn't let me play during a match. My parents and I decided to come to Canada because of many reasons. One of them was to play soccer freely with other girls in my age. I was only 12 years old when I came to Vancouver, Canada. I did not speak a word in English and could not socialize with other children at first. However, playing soccer with the Caucasian kids gradually let me immerse in the new culture and learn English. The first team I played on was Douglas Park soccer team, and then I joined the Point Grey soccer team right after. While playing on these teams, I improved my skills and gained many injuries. I broke my pinky twice playing soccer and never healed properly. I love to play soccer so much that I also play on the school team outside the league. Playing soccer means a lot to me, and to some extent, it defines who I am.
I originally grew up in Winnipeg, and I came to Vancouver at the age of 19. I didn't move here, but I came here at 19 and saw things like rhododendrons and green grass. I think it was May, and there was still snow in Winnipeg where I'm from. And at that point, I actually decided that I wanted to live here. I moved here in 1986, and I got here for the last week of Expo 86. I have now lived here for 25 years, and I continue to be in awe of the absolute beauty of this city on a regular basis. Every time I drive into the town on Cambie Street, the skyline just jumps out at you with downtown and the mountains behind it. It's amazing. And in this city, I'm a pretty active guy, but I couldn't believe the options that were available here. I've been able to do almost anything here. And I continue now to play rugby, play tennis, play ball hockey, and I actually hand cycle to and from work. And one of the highlights of my life in Vancouver is that with all my involvement with wheelchair sports, and specifically with wheelchair rugby, I was lucky enough and honored to be selected to carry the Paralympic torch for Vancouver 2010. I truly believe that Vancouver is one of, if not the, most accessible city in the world. You can do almost anything here, and when I have people come from other places in the world, they just can't believe it. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Thank you, Vancouver.
When I was 12 years old, I played center field on the team that won the Northern Ontario Girls Baseball Championship. It was a thrilling event. Years later, in Victoria, my son Miles played first base in Little League. Win or lose, I loved every single game. Eating the hot dogs, the excitement in the stands, the stern umpire, the dogs barking, and the happy players on the diamond. Eventually, though, those years ended. The kids left home, and we moved to Kerrisdale. One Saturday in April, during our first year living just off the corner of 41st and Balsam, I heard the sounds of a marching band wafting through the air. I ran out to the balcony just in time to see a sweet procession of little kids decked out in their Little League uniforms. The people on the sidewalks clapped and cheered as the teams meandered over to Elm Park for the official opening of the Little League season. I immediately picked up the phone and called Miles in Montreal, described the scene, and then held the phone out for him to enjoy the sounds. Although I couldn't see him, I knew he was smiling. Now, on this very day, I call him every year, wherever he is in the world. He's teaching in Korea this year and also playing baseball. So I gotta run and make this call right now.
Hello?
Hello, Miles. It's your mom calling. I want you to listen out the window here and tell me what you hear. I've got all the little leaguers marching along, all looking so ragtag, and the balloons and the horses are marching, and
In Surrey, I rode my bike everywhere. In my last year of high school, I remember upgrading from a mountain bike I loved to my dad's white 1970s Norco roadie. It was a sleek machine that quickly became my primary transport. The suburbs didn't seem to offer themselves to cycling. I would show up at a friend's house for dinner 5 blocks down the road, and everyone would be surprised that I had ridden my bicycle. When I moved to Vancouver from the suburbs, riding bikes appeared to be a part of the culture of the city. I found it much easier to ride around, and I used my bike to explore my new surroundings. My involvement in Vancouver cycling scene has increased over the past 3 years. My means of transportation has evolved into something that is really fun and important to me. It became a token of self-sufficiency and challenged me to learn new things and interact with distinct, educated, and intriguing people. Since moving to the city, a large part of my involvement has been helping to organize group rides with my friends. For the month of August, I'll be leaving Vancouver by bicycle on a tour. For me, part of the intrigue of riding a bike is that you don't know where it will take you.
I remember holding onto the edge of the Percy Norman dive tank when I was around 6 or 7 years old. I was hesitant. I was scared. I had to get used to the idea of deep water. I would let go and then quickly grab on again, let go and grab on, and then eventually I was on my way. By 8, 9, and 10, I was swimming more serious, all over the city, morning, noon, and night. In 1966, I was 12 years old and joined the prestigious Dolphin Swim Club. I remember waking up at 6 a.m. excited to swim. I knew I wanted to go and compete. I could never be sure if I would win, so I just plowed through that water. I remember coming out of the workouts crying. I just worked so hard. It was painful, but I kept going. In 1968, I broke the record for the 100 meters breaststroke at the Percy Norman Pool. And by 1970, I was the Canadian champion breaststroker. My high school annual kept me humble. Soon I was traveling all over. Then I found myself in Winnipeg trying out for the 1972 Olympic Games. I remember calling home crying. My parents said, "Just do your best." In order to go to the Olympics, I had to be top 3 in Canada as well as meeting the qualifying time for the event. I remember going into the third length, the 150-meter mark. I was working so hard feeling like I was going nowhere. And then I had this surge, like something spiritual. I just can't explain how happy I felt getting out of the water and finding out I'd qualified for the Olympic standard. I just burst into tears sitting on the chair after my race. 3 minutes before the race, wanting to give up. I didn't give a damn if I made the team or not. Then finding myself minutes later crying for happiness of qualifying for the Olympic standard. I just can't explain how happy I was after the race was over and making the Olympic standard. Never in my life had I felt such pressure. Never, never, never. Couldn't eat breakfast, just tense. After it was all over, I was completely happy that I did try to hang in and be tough. And boy, was it tough. I wrote that after the 1972 Olympic trials. I made the qualifying time by 1/100th of a second. I did my best. I reached my goal. And now back to Percy. I was offered the job of head coach for the Percy Norman Swim Club. It was my first job at 20 years old. Should I or shouldn't I? I took the job. 6 years later, I got my certification for guarding and instructing. Then shortly after that, I was nervously thrown into teaching aquafit. I practice encouragement and positive reinforcement, whether I'm working with athletes, seniors, kids, people with injuries, or folks who have never exercised before. Everyone can reach their goal at their own pace. At Percy Norman, I like to welcome the community so they will feel at home, have a positive experience, and they will keep coming back. Percy is my second home, and here my passions, lifestyle, and work life came together. After all these years, I still like being on deck where it all started.
Thank you for watching Stories in Standard Def every Saturday from 1:30 to 2 p.m. I want to thank the Park Board for supporting community arts projects such as Vancouver Stories 125, Kerrisdale Collective Memory, and Riley Park Stories. I hope these stories have inspired you to get off the couch and go and get a bit of exercise, because it's good for the blood and good for the brain. If you have any stories, you can always email me. And until next week, it's Lisa G.